Hello and welcome to Zamna's 7th webinar talking about health, identity and travel. It's great that you've joined us again today. Really excited to have you as a broad and diverse audience. I'm really pleased to have four esteemed industry colleagues, as it were, joining me on this webinar today. First of all, I thought it'd be good just to start by catching up really on where we are as an industry, and then what I'll do is I'll allow our four guests to introduce themselves and show you the challenges that they've got in and what they see at the moment in terms of opportunity to come to the fore as well. And then we'll have a really good and robust discussion about how we as an industry need to move forward to actually allow this industry to truly scale and to truly grow and to get back somewhere close to where we were what is now a couple of years ago. So I think we can safely say that we've been on one heck of a journey over the last 18 months to 2 years. We're probably all a little bit battered and bruised, from airlines to health providers to us as individuals. We've all been through the mix one way or another. The reality is, though, as we look forward, the world will really struggle to have more lockdowns. The governments have poured tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions even into their economies to actually keep the world moving. And we can't afford to continue that. So with the advent of things like vaccines and what's happening there, we can see that actually we can start to move the risk to something that's a bit more pragmatic, that allows the industry to expand, that allows our economy to grow again. And that's the challenge that we've got. But as we kind of move into this new world and more people flying, of leisure taking off again, of the US to Europe route opening up, there comes big challenges too. Suddenly, we've got to ensure that we keep our critical services like health services working. We've got to protect our borders in that regard to do that. And we've also got to protect data. I think it's worth noting here that over the last 18 months, there's almost, I don't want to say there's been a blind eye turned to personal identifiable information, but we've had to do what we've needed to do to get us moving as much as we have, which means actually that we've had printouts of health certificates which have got personal and sensitive information on them. These have been flying around the place. They've been shown to various people. They've been uploaded to websites, to apps, and you name it, and processed. That is actually a huge challenge when it comes to data protection and GDPR. So we've got to look at data as well. And as you probably know, if you've watched any of our webinars in the past, Zamna itself is very passionate about data privacy. And that will come out, I'm sure, in the wash as we discuss today. So with that as the backdrop, let's actually meet each and every one of our panelists today. We've got two people who have come from the health world, both named Alexandra and Alex here. One is from Cured. I'll let Alex do his own introduction shortly. A UK-based health testing provider, and he's the CEO of that. We've got Alexandra here from Travel Check-in in Portugal, who are pioneering a wide range of testing capabilities. And Alexandra comes from a medical background himself, so gets the technology side of things, but also gets the need from a medical point of view. We also have Satyaki. Really pleased to see him again. We've crossed paths many times in the past on the circuit, as it were. He's a veteran really of digital thinking and innovation, having worked all over the world in a number of different operational settings. He brings that wide range of experience and knowledge to the fore. So looking forward to hearing from him. And lastly, our special guest, as it were, we have Floyd joining us as well. So Floyd, representing Zamna, another veteran of the industry, who will introduce himself shortly. So what I've asked each of these guys to do is to introduce themselves, let them explain who they are, where they've come from, why they've been talking to Zamna, why they are here today, and to challenge us as an industry about what we need to do to move forward. We'll give them each sort of 5 to 7 minutes to do that little intro. And then after that, we'll dive into discussion around both health and travel and how these worlds can come together and actually how we can solve the challenge that is out there for our industry. If you want to ask questions, then there is the facility on the YouTube just to the right of your screen to actually add questions in there. So feel free to use that, and we'll surface those questions to the audience we've got here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the top corner. I'm going to invite Alexandra to introduce himself and just take a few moments to say, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, and this is a challenge I gave to him. What is it that keeps you up at night? Alexandra, over to you.
Thank you, Raul. It's really nice to be here, and thank you for the invitation. So my name is Alexandra. I'm a medical doctor since 2012. I've been working with 2 different specialties. I've been working in primary care and sports medicine, my passion. And in the last few years, I've been dedicated to management and innovation, where I am a medical director for the pharma industry company here in Portugal. I'm the country lead in the medical parts, and I'm also finishing my PhD and my last month of my MBA. I'm working and fighting COVID since day one. So I'm talking about March last year. Since day one, I've been helping the national healthcare system and fighting COVID and trying to figure out how can put the society working together to fight this. So there is, and it is important to know that working in the field of the healthcare, I have to say that this is a difficult, extremely difficult and fragmented sector. So we are not prepared for digitalization. We try to, but we have few medical doctors, companies working in the fields that they are struggling to be in the comfort zone. So what we know today is that today's world is filled with data, as Raul said. So we produce information and at an unprecedented rates, either in volume, either in diversity. So it's extremely complex, this. And there is those who say that technological innovation is not indispensable for a company to be present in the market. In fact, it is true, because we have current reality of many companies that implementing a new tool is not yet a matter of life or death. So, but what we know is that the attentive entrepreneur will notice that those who are waiting for the right time will find it is too late. So we have to do it. The transformation is the presence, and what scares most the medical doctors and the sector, it's the velocity of the transformation, and we have to keep going, and we have to be present and to be there. So what we saw in Portugal is that we have too many labs. If you want to figure out and try to discover and to test if you are positive or negative, you just have, or you go to the streets and look for a lab and schedule for yourself, or you go to the Google or something like that, Bing or etc., and you try to figure out where is it. And if you try to figure out, you will receive 2 inputs. You have a phone call or a number for call or an email to send emails. But what we know now is that linguistic barriers, phones and calls that no one answers, emails that no one replies, it's a huge barrier. So what we've done here in Portugal is we built Travel Check-in 5 months ago. Is to aggregate all the places that we have and where you can do it to test and put in an extremely easy and friendly platform to book the tests with unprecedented fastest time and to simplify the process. And with that, we also are helping the partners, the test partners, putting all the information correctly for the regulators. Why? We are automatizing all the process. So if I want to do a test, I just go to the app. I will put all the information that is needed for the regulator. We will set up my account. I will try to figure out to find near me or by district, where can I do it? It will appear as a list of all the places with prices and hours. I will just put it, save it, and it's booked. And in the other part, for the test partner will receive the agenda of the day, and I just have to do the check-in and do the results. And immediately, because we are a health company, we are connected to the regulator and we have the access to the database. So we can put all in and send all the information to the database in an automated process. And we are talking about in reducing 5 to 10 minutes per test. And in a day that we a year that we need to keep testing, we have the vaccinations going on, and I'm thrilled that Portugal is the first country in the world to achieve the 85% of the population with a double dose. It is extremely important to be agile in this part. So because and I'm a traveler. I've been traveling to different countries in the last, and I'm finishing in the last 3 to 4 months, and it is huge the amount of paper that I have to fill. It's unprecedented. So I'm traveling in Portugal to Portugal, and I have to fill a formulary every time. If I want to go from Porto to Lisbon by plane, I have to put it in the formulary, who I am, all the data, over and over again. And when we have cross borders, this is huge. It makes no sense. So we are in a digital world. Let's use technology to help us. Let's put everything more agile and try to think to simplify. The simplicity, it's the beauty of of everything. So let's simplify all the process that we can. So the thing that keep me awake in the night is that we have to struggle with all the companies and persons, different medical doctors and other stakeholders in the healthcare industry, and try to figure out how we can digitalize. And we started 5 months ago, and we keep going. And each day we have a good winning, because we are gaining more clients and in showing to the healthcare system and the industry that this is possible. So let's amplify this. Let's put our voice to the world. And it is really good to be here and share my experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandre. Yeah, really interesting to hear what's going on in Portugal. And then I think it would be great now to hear from our other Alex Templeton. Alexandre, you mentioned about the fragmented market you've got out there. Alex, I'm sure you've got a perspective on that as well. And there's probably a huge contrast in what you're doing and how the UK operates compared to what's going on in Portugal. Why don't you introduce yourself and share some thoughts?
Thanks a lot, Rael. Very, very, very happy to, and great to be here also. So Cured, the company that I co-founded pre-existing the pandemic, we were incorporated in 2016, and as a primary care provider at the intersection of digital and physical in the UK. And we found ourselves at a crossroads at the beginning of the pandemic, where our primary services around doctor home visits were severely impacted. We had to suspend them for the safety of our patients and practitioners, and we were overwhelmed by the demand for testing, for diagnostic testing in the very early stages of the pandemic. So based on that patient demand, we were one of the first private providers in the UK back in March of 2020. And we've learned a lot about testing and how to deliver it properly through the intervening months and coming up a couple of years since then. So we were the first. We were one of the first test providers that were. We were the first test release, day 2 and day 8, all part of the travel regime in the UK. One of the first private providers, and we also helped pioneer using lateral flow devices for travel in the UK with a product that we built and launched with British Airways. So we've been working a lot with the travel industry on testing. So as well as BA, we're partnered with American Airlines, Air France, KLM, SAS, Heathrow Airport, and a number of others. And our big challenge has been how painful the process has been for patients. for passengers and travelers. And our job has really been to try and remove that pain and make the whole end-to-end process as frictionless as possible. Many reasons to do that. First of all, obviously, customer experience. And we know, looking at the travel volumes in the UK, where we've had a much more robust testing regime than pretty much any country that you can think of in terms of the number of tests required pre and post arrival to the UK. We can see in the travel volumes how severely impacted they were versus our neighbours in the European Union, particularly when they started to allow double vaccinated travellers to move around freely within the EU without any real testing required. So why do we want to do this? Customer experience, travel volumes, and to get things moving again. But what we really want to do is help create a travel testing product that is fit for purpose, that's robust, that helps address the challenges around imported infection, which we saw as particularly severely with Delta in the early part of this year in the UK. And those variants of concern. So our job is, and what we struggle with, or the big challenges in industry is how we help resolve that inherent tension that governments struggle with between frictionless travel and reopening the economy fully, and also safeguarding public health. So we engage deeply with government, with travel providers to try and do the best job that we can in doing that, whether that's great logistics around the testing, whether that's a really easily usable platform that allows people to understand what tests they require for their travel, to the piece that we're really focused on now is how we can integrate with airlines and their back ends to mitigate against that issue that we've seen, where quite unfairly, check-in staff are expected to be able to pass information between numerous different apps, pieces of paper being waved in their faces of dubious quality or provenance, and them having to make some kind of judgment call about the quality of the provider or the test that's been presented to them as a negative COVID status. So we're really trying to help that end-to-end process get more deeply integrated into the back end and the data of airlines to really help ease some of those issues for people.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, it's interesting to see the progress you've made and been on one amazing journey over the last 18 months to get to this particular point. I'm going to save Satyaki till last. Actually, I'm going to come to Floyd first of all, because I know this is something that he's passionate about as well, about how that challenge of data kind of comes into play in the airline industry, and it's something that he's been kind of working through and scratching his head on a little bit over the last few weeks. So Floyd, why don't you introduce yourself and challenges?
So thanks for having me as the surprise speaker. I'm a travel tech distribution veteran, I guess you would say. And back in 1996, I started with a premise in my mind that was airlines and travel was an extremely important part of this world that we live in. And the premise that I had was that, I left the United States in 1991 and was fortunate enough to be able to travel through work to now well over 65 countries and experience different cultures. And so my activity in this business is to try and perpetuate that gift that we have of being able to get across borders and travel. And there have been various inflection points in the industry around technology, around data throughout the years. And this will date me, but there was times when we had airline tickets that were on red carbon paper. that then went to ATB2 coupons, and then there was an inflection point to the e-ticket. Okay, and then there was another huge inflection point back when this thing called the internet started, and I was involved in travel back then. So those are all huge impacts. And today, I believe, and this is one of the reasons that I joined Zamna, is I believe that we are at an extremely important inflection point in travel. And this inflection point is going to impact airlines and everybody, and it already is. We're seeing that with the pandemic, that it's impacted everybody. It's shut down economies. It's bankrupted airlines. It's done horrible things to us. And as professionals in this industry, it's incumbent on us to find solutions to solve that. It's to find solutions that will standardize. We'll find solutions that will be all inclusive, and I think that's extremely important for me, and I know it's important for Zamna. ICAO has a saying of no country left behind. We as professionals, whether you're a testing organization or an airline, it should be no individuals left behind. We need to empower everybody to live and be able to live professionally and privately the exceptional gift that I've had through the years of traveling when and where I wanted to. And the beauty of Zamna, I think, and what really attracted me to this was, as a travel veteran of traveling over 150 days a year for a lot of years, this was it. This is it. This is the lowest common denominator that exists for everyone on this planet that's going to travel, or the ICAO standard of data that's incorporated into this, or an ID card. If we start with this and challenge the testing organizations to standardize and realize that fit to fly testing is not going to go away. We are living in a world now that has changed, and we need to keep those barriers or those borders down between countries. We need to standardize the testing. We need to be able to see that everybody can get a fit to fly test, and that information is accessible anywhere in the world just by entering this international standard data into any system and being able to pull up the validity of that identity, the validity of the test, or the validity of the vaccination. So my challenge to both sides are to get that standard into place. We obviously want to be an integral part of that. And as a veteran in this industry, I'm going to try and do everything I can to help Zamna be part of that standard and perpetuate that as fast as possible, because it will do good for everybody in this industry and the world in general.
Thank you, Floyd. Very eloquently put. And yeah, the one standard we've had for many, many years is indeed that passport. Satyaki, let's turn to yourself here. Do a bit of introduction for yourself. And I know you're a man who likes a good standard, and you're looking at an international world. Cast some thoughts on that as well for us.
Sure. Thanks, Rahul. Thank you all. Really pleased to be here on this webinar. I think I've been in the industry for about 22 years, and it's certainly changed in some ways since I first started. And we began the process of digital transformation before COVID began, or COVID sort of was something any of us knew about. And we did it because we just thought that the aviation industry needed to operate in a different way. And we believed that technology had the power and the opportunity to transform customer experience, operational efficiency, and also think about new ways of generating revenue for everybody within the aviation stakeholder value chain. And we sort of started investing in digital transformation. And I think it stood us in very good stead at Bangalore Airport, because we started probably around 2016-17. By the time COVID sort of reared its head, we were 3.5 years, 4 years into a journey. And the organization had spent a fair bit of time in thinking about what technology could do to change the customer experience, efficiency, and revenue generation possibilities. So I think in many ways we were able to react faster than a lot of people. And I think that's particularly important, especially in a time like this when there are so many moving parts. And I think the two Alexis and Floyd actually alluded to some very interesting points in their introductory remarks. And as you all know, I think the travel industry, the aviation industry has been hit incredibly hard by COVID. And it's essentially all of us have had our lifeblood sort of threatened in terms of it being fundamentally something that we've wondered whether we can survive. And the last 18 months have been, I think, much more challenging than any of the other previous crises, whether you think about OPEC or any sort of, the outcome or the fallout of 9/11, the first Gulf War, et cetera, et cetera. All of those were, I think, for a much more limited duration. In many cases, they were localized, and or they had some impacts in some places, but definitely not the sort of worldwide global impact that we've seen here due to COVID. That said, I think it's also sort of thrown up some very interesting opportunities in the midst of the crisis in terms of collaboration, in terms of data sharing, as some of you talked about, in terms of what we can do to potentially rethink the way we travel, the way we sort of perceive how we might have to live in the future, and also some common standards while keeping in mind, what the challenges or dangers of privacy breaches are and things like that. So I think from that perspective, what Alex was talking about with respect to Cured in terms of having some sort of a common standard, some way of verifying that document, and then what Floyd spoke about in terms of the passport being a common denominator, I think was sort of, it resonates very heavily with what we're trying to do. And I think from our perspective, at least as far as the aviation industry is concerned, everybody I've talked to, I mean, there seems to be a unanimous opinion that I don't think people are scared of traveling, and I don't think demand is the issue right now. I think it's the sheer inconsistency of what the standards are, and the fact that nobody really knows what it is that's going to be applied depending on where they go and how quickly things could change. And the second issue is, will you get stuck somewhere because of this sort of change, or will you have a different rule applied at a different place that you don't know about? I mean, things like that. So it's about essentially not so much I'm scared to travel as I'm scared to arrive somewhere and get stuck. And I think we need to figure out a way of having some sort of common standards, protocols, principles under which all of us can operate, because we're going to have to find a way of living with COVID. We're going to have to find a way of going back to sort of thinking about how we get on with our lives and sort of navigate our way around COVID rather than trying to completely deny its existence or wish it will go away. And maybe COVID is just a dress rehearsal in some ways of other things that could show sort of, or are likely to show up in a few years. So I think we probably got to think of a very, very different way of dealing with information in a secure blockchain sort of environment where we have single token identity verification, where we had contactless travel, biometrics, and all of it done in a way that does not compromise individuals in identity or personal information. And I think that is going to be the principal challenge all of us are going to face over the course of the next few years. So really happy to be here. Very, very intrigued and interested in terms of learning about what the others have to say, and very happy to share my experiences.
Thank you, Satyaki. Very eloquently put as well. I'm going to pick up on something you just mentioned there, actually. You were talking about two aspects, not just the need for kind of good identity data and good health data, but also the need to understand how and when to apply that data as well. So I was going to open this up to the floor, really, and I think Floyd actually probably he's already nodding away, might have an opinion on that. So it's not just a case of this is an accurate certificate, this is an accurate passport. It's, well, what's the context in which I'm using this in?
Yeah, I mean, having traveled to so many places and filled out so many forms and jumped through so many hoops in my life. I think that, you know, the beauty of it is we need to take the accurate data that we're getting from the testing facilities, the passport, et cetera, and depending on the O&D of the traveler, we need to apply very rigorously the rules to that, so that we can, you know, so that the traveler doesn't get stuck somewhere or doesn't get denied entry. And I think, you know, that's one of the things that really attracted me to the solution, was that, you know, we're updating these complex rules about roughly 1,000 times a day on average. And so when you're creating a signal in the system, it goes out there and it gets retrieved by an airline. They know that when that green check mark comes in their system, that the test is valid, and that for the destination, all the requirements have been met regarding the rules. So it is, you know, the key: accurate data, apply the rules. That's essential. Accurate data without applying the rules is just delaying the fact that you're going to have to check something else later. So you need to combine the two to streamline and make a frictionless transaction.
Rahul, on a funny note, right, based on what Floyd said, actually, I was just thinking, you know, in India, we're so used to filling in forms. It's something we learned from the British and even probably perfected. You know, that one of the good things about COVID is we're so used to filling forms that part, you know, although some of us complain, those of us who've been away for 15, 16 years or used to sort of the digital side of things. But I think most Indians sort of take that as we've done that for decades, so no problem in sort of filling in forms. So, I mean, I think, but even that's changing. I mean, we've got a very, very sophisticated digital payment stack here in India, for instance, and that's something I think is better than anywhere else in the world. I mean, one of the last 18 months, I've been amazed at how good the Indian payment stack is. And I think that, for instance, is something that we can build on and use as a basis for so many other things. But I was just thinking, I mean, I was just laughing when Floyd spoke about the form filling.
Yeah. If you can get the form, fill it in once, but then I think the beauty is if that form has been filled in once, like a vaccination record, then just persist exactly. It, you know? So that way that traveler or that individual just needs to, again, show that passport and have that accurate data retrieved.
I mean, I think the other thing, Floyd, I mean, if you think about it, right, I mean, this is what Rahul and I were speaking about last week from a travel perspective. It's not just about the vaccination information. I mean, for a long time now, I've always wondered, why are we all carrying physical passports with visa stamps and things like that? Literally, it should all be in some sort of a wallet linked to your biometric identity, encrypted with blockchain or whatever, even more advanced technology at some point. And you should be pre-cleared before you travel so that you don't have to ever stand in a queue. Because I think the thing that stresses most people out when they travel is the queuing at different processes. So if you can do something to sort of take away very many of these things, I mean, I think baggage is already being addressed. You have SBDs, you can pick up the bags at home, you can have it delivered to whatever destination. Security is probably the one thing that, for the next few years, at least there will be physical security, but at some point you will walk through something that will scan you as you're walking. So equally, if you've got your ID, if you've got your health information, if you've got your passport information and visa clearance all set up, you should be cleared before you board, rather than being stopped on arrival. And any sort of stopping or questioning should be the exception rather than the rule, rather than the way it is today. It just doesn't make any sense.
No, I totally agree. And I think one of the things that I witnessed, I was privileged enough to visit a large cruise line in Florida. And what you're saying, Satyaki, is exactly where we need to get to, meaning that they asked me for my data the day before I visited them. And as I walked up to tour the ship, the cameras picked up my biometric face and the light went green and I went through. I never showed that document. And they had already taken my passport. They knew who I was. They said, okay, we'll let him on the ship. And as I walked up, my name came up and a green light came on and I boarded. And that, you're right, is essentially where we need to get to. However, there are organizations and antiquated processes in place today, and we've seen the failure of IATA on their attempt to try and put technology together that is cumbersome Nobody wants to use it because it takes too long. Airlines are screaming because it's 30 minutes to handle one traveler because the app doesn't work or they don't want to download it. So we need to change the thinking of the industry core to get to that ultimate step that you're mentioning and I'm mentioning with that cruise line. But I think that today with, with health using Zamna, airlines using Zamna, we'll take a big step to get there.
It's interesting. We've come on this fascinating journey over many decades. It started off with a need that you had that it was a blue book. It then for the UK turned purple and is going back to blue now. That was presented and that got you through airports. Then they started scanning those documents and it went a bit more digital around the data. Then 9/11 happened and there was more data to be collected. And what's happening now, I think we're at this inflection point now where health is coming into that piece as well, and a bit of travel history as well. So the number of things that we actually have to do starts to grow and grow and grow. I'm keen to bring both Alex and Alex back into the conversation here before we get to deep down in solving everything off in the future.
So absolutely, and it's really interesting what the guys are saying about what the ideal passport would look like. But think about what the passport in the health context looks like at the moment. It's like with your travel passport, at least there's only one format, right? It may change color, it may have a different logo on the front, depending what country or or crest on it, depending what country you're traveling from. But there's one format they're checking. Currently, the situation we have in terms of your COVID status is that there is 50 different kinds or 1,000 different kinds, and the person that you're showing it to has absolutely no idea the validity of it or of the validity of the issuer, in essence. And it can be the case that you actually show a correct passport, a correct certificate, or you've uploaded your completely valid test results into one of these apps, and yet it'll still be rejected. So it creates a huge amount of uncertainty, and which clearly affects passenger confidence, and also makes increases stress around queuing, increases stress for the check-in staff, and is a very difficult problem to solve at the moment, and one that merits a lot of attention. I mean, we are pre-cleared for apps you will have heard of, and yet we still have our tests rejected periodically for travelers. So we've got a very broken system, and ideally you want to bring all of that data together, your personal biometrics, your information that will allow, and your visa information with your health information in one place. But we are so far away from that in such a fragmented situation at the moment, that I think the first thing that we need to do is bring that data in one place, your health data in one place, make that easily visible and accessible to the access control, so the check-in staff, to help speed you on your way, and ultimately, bringing that health data together with your personal data to allow you to move frictionlessly through the airport, is the ultimate goal. But it feels a very long way from where we are right now.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can see the frustration in your eyes, Alex, as you explain that as well. It must feel like this is where we need to get to, but you're there's only so much you can do. The industry needs to kind of step with you through that. Alexander, sorry, go on, Alex.
I mean, we work with a number of different airlines, and they don't know which solution to push. They're pushing multiple solutions at the same time and asking companies like us to integrate with various providers. It's like it's 1990 and we're being asked to publish on Laserdisc, Betamax, VHS, and a couple of other ones you haven't heard of, in the hope that one of them will stick. And that's obviously a very difficult position for us as a provider. We have to allocate our resources to the medium that we think is going to be most effective. So what we really need is clarity over what that winning standard would be. You guys referenced the IATA app. That was obviously there was a strong expectation that would gain a lot of traction. We just haven't seen it. So that's the question that fundamentally needs to be answered to get somewhere close to the situation we were just describing.
So with that in mind, so Floyd, did you want to come in and
just real quick? I mean, Alex, if you look at what we're trying to do is, you're saying that the airlines are using different providers. Granted, they might have their list of top 4 or 5 providers, but the connection of that data needs to happen at the source, right? It can't happen with data being passed back and forth because you've got GDPR, you've got hacking issues, etc. So if you're joining that data and the validity of that data at the source, you've already won the battle, right? And as long as that data isn't, hackable in some way and is secure, you've won the battle.
Absolutely.
If you're pinging things back and forth from different suppliers and they're sending it in one format, another one is sending another format, I mean, that's just a quagmire, and it's a disaster ready to happen. So that's why we're trying to, bridge that gap between the airlines and yourselves and just say, match that data at the source, go in and grab up a secure cryptographic message anytime you want, anywhere in your environment, and then you're ready to go.
Absolutely. That's why we're so excited about what you guys are doing at Zamno, because it circumvents sending your data out to these disparate apps, integrations, pieces of paper, screenshots on people's phones, and actually creates a single source of truth with some data security around it that can unlock a lot of these passenger journeys and make them a lot more palatable.
I'm loving this, Raul. So if you allow me, I'm loving this because I see the future just like you. So, but I have too many questions about privacy. I don't know if I want a government or companies to have my Face ID recognized, but I have it already because I have a phone that recognizes my face. So we have, someone said in the past that the best way to predict the future is to invent it. So it is what we're trying to do. And we are using the technology to predict the best way to do it also, because as Floyd said, GDPR, it will be it's a huge fight to us. And what we need now, so we have the technology, we see the light in the front of the tunnel, and what we have to do is to challenge, and we have to challenge the airline companies. I'm coming from a sector, health sector, where the SOP, the standard operational procedures, it's a pillar for what we are doing, because we are working together and we work in the same way. I choose with who I will work with, but I will work in that way that is presented in the SOP. So, and Alex, I see your pain, because trying to figure out how to standardize and to put everything to try, because we cannot fit in the same way in the different procedures that the different airlines are working with, and or the different passports that we work with. So the travel problem here is, and this is a new for me. I don't know if the people we are seeing know that, because in my mind, the airline companies have an access for a database with the passport, and we just check the numbers, but this is not what happened. And this is one of the main problems. And this could be a challenge for the future. Until then, let's work with this. And I'm a travel that I will do 4 or 5 different flights per month. And every time that I'm going to the airport, my passport is checked in the really same way. They look to the passport, they look to the computer, they look at me, they try to figure out if it fits or not fits, and they pass me or not. Until now, they pass me all the time. But we have to do just like Floyd said, and what Zamna is doing, to keep the information in a security way, and to work with that in a security way where only the passenger knows it and everything else is encrypted. So the blockchain technology, it's a win process. We already know this. So okay, with the pandemics, what we know now is that we need the passports, but we also need the health info. And in the medical perspective, as a medical doctor and entrepreneur that I think I am, we have to keep testing. We will spend a lot of less money to do a lockdown again. So we have to keep testing. So let's challenge airlines, let's challenge the governments to put a procedure that fits. Well, okay, it could not be the same for the 193 countries in the world, but let's divide it. So in Europe, we are a union Europe. So let's work together. and let's try to standardize the procedure. So for all the countries here, let's work with this. This fits to all, okay? And with that, we together, Zam and both Alex, we can do it because we know how to do it. We just have to do to try to fit what we are doing with the standard procedures. So we have to challenge airlines to work with us, with the governments, to find a way to simplify the process, because we already are using the technology that is needed to that. We just have to amplify that. Okay, let's test it. It works, and let's go. This is the best way to work with, because it's the papers, the number of amount of papers that we have to fulfill, the different, and if I have a stop in Portugal, Porto, Lisbon to London, I will have to fulfill the Portuguese formularies and the UK formularies. So it makes no sense. This share of data, this validation of the passenger, this validation of the healthcare info have to be simplified, of course, in a security way. And with this, I think we are, I don't know if it's the correct or it's not, but we'll try to figure it out. But I think, in my opinion, with my vision, we are walking in the right direction. And of course, the airports, a huge player here, because they will help the fast track, the validations, and etc. here. So, and we are thinking only in traveling, but we enjoy to go to a music concert. We enjoy to go to the football stadium or a gym for gymnastics or others. And in every these situations, we have queues, because we have to show not the passport, but we also have to show the health information. So let's standardize that. Okay, if I only show my passport, could be my ID in every place, it's linked to my info of health, and it's validated already in a proper way. So let's go.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. It's really good challenge you've got there in and around, especially the privacy side of things. With what you're experiencing today.
Sorry, I just wanted to go ahead. I had one response to Alex. I think the issue, I mean, for a second, let's park COVID to the side. I mean, I think, today it's COVID, tomorrow it might be something else, and we probably have to have some form of health clearance, let's say, that we will need. But if you go back to the fundamental point of travel clearance that we were talking about earlier, and that Alex also spoke about, in terms of saying, if you've got your passport information securely stored in some digital way, without identity and security being compromised to all and sundry, and let's assume that you've got that visa information also in there well in advance of your travel date, I think the thing that people get most stressed about is having to do everything and standing in queues on the day of travel. If you could sort of give them pre-clearance because of document checks that are done in advance or whatever it is, and you get some sort of a QR code, even something as simple as a QR code, which says that this is your unique QR code. It's linked to your face, your ID, and your travel itinerary. I mean, even a solution as simple as that will actually make things far easier, because it can be read well fast enough, and so long as the face matches what information is there in the QR code, everything else should be already pre-checked. So, I mean, I think there are ways to do it. I don't think this is a technology issue at all at this point. I think it's an issue of regulatory compliance, or getting people who sort of have to make decisions. And I can't remember, I think it was Floyd who said it, but fundamentally, it's a question of making sure that we can get governmental and regulatory okay, rather than it being a technology problem. I'm pretty convinced that the technology exists.
Yeah, the technology does exist. We've got it, and I with all due respect, I'd challenge the idea of a piece of paper with a QR code on it, because it's not going to work
No, on
at
the
scale.
phone.
It's
On the
not going to
phone.
work even on the phone. It's not going to work at scale. What if you don't have a phone? It's not inclusive. Again, you know, I'm being pedantic, but this is all inclusive for anybody that wants to travel. This is not, you know. So the solution is take the data that needs to be verified, connect it to one of these little guys, put it in a secure cryptographic message like we're doing, persist it, and allow anybody in the travel ecosystem that gets this from that traveler to enter the ICAO standard data and grab that message. And I mean, it's as simple as that. Now, we could solution the entire problem that IATA has created by their travel pass failing. We could integrate into that solution and fix it for them. We can integrate into GDSs, we can connect to the GDSs, we connect to PSSs, and it's a simple implementation of just one call to an API that creates this cryptographic message that then anybody in the environment can access and say, yep, that's valid information. So I resist and I push back on anything that is app, QR code, or paper, because it is not inclusive of all the travelers in the world, in my opinion.
So it's a good challenge, Floyd, there, and it's something that I've beaten up my colleagues up on this in the past about the cost of integration, because if you end up down an app route or a web route and things like that, each time you have to bring that thing in, there is development that's needed for that. And at the moment, with the industry on its knees, there aren't developers who can actually do that. So part of what I challenge our team on is to say, well, make sure that the technology that you're making available integrates super fast and super quickly. And this is, you know, we've talked a little bit about Alex and Alex here. One of the reasons that they're interested in what Xander's doing is because of how easy it is to integrate. So I don't know whether you want to make any comment on that. Either Alex wants to make a comment on that from the technical point of view, the ease of actually kind of getting up and running, and what you need from that point of view. Do you looking for something complex or looking for something simple?
Well, it's a loaded question. I think the right thing for society is something, and it's something that's very easy to integrate. We're a health technology company. We can deal with multiple integrations. We can do deep integrations, and we have the technical autonomy to do that. That's not the case for most healthcare providers. So fundamentally, you need to create a standard and a tool that is as universally compatible as possible and as light touch to implement. And that is what will start to unlock some of these passenger journeys, remove uncertainty, build confidence in the market, build confidence in providers, build confidence in the data quality, and will allow us to see, we would expect a near normalization of travel. So certainly, the lightest touch, the solution in terms of the tech lift to implement it, the better, really.
And
Great, thank
and that solution, Alex, the key to that solution is making sure that anything you do around that trip is done pre-airport, because as Satyaki was saying, people at the airport, QR codes, that's not scalable. So you need to validate that data before the traveler so that these airlines will start turning back on the one item that really comforted the traveler. I'm checking in online, I can print my boarding pass, right? That's, wow, I can travel now. I'm comforted in the fact, and even the fact that the airline, if they get the signal from us saying that this data is good and validated, they could have a little icon on there or a logo on there that they've printed their boarding pass. It's got a fit to fly stamp on it, and then your traveler just goes to the airport and right through the fast track.
It's the idea. Look, I've traveled during the pandemic. I've been in exactly the downside scenario of that, where I'm standing at the back of a queue for check-in. There's some very harried looking staff. I'm frantically filling out forms while standing in the queue. and all the time watching the clock tick down to the gates closing or to check-in closing, and actually seeing check-in close in front of my eyes because I didn't get to the front of the queue because they were the check-in staff weren't able to process the disparate pieces of data being thrown at them by the people in the queue trying to get through and check in. So I've actually had that personal experience myself. It's an unpleasant one. It feels like going back in time to some dark old days of travel. And the important thing is to create solutions that completely take that pain away from the traveler.
Yeah, agree completely, Alex. I'm very conscious of time. We've just got our last few minutes left. So what I'll ask is for 30 seconds from each of you guys, kind of closing comments and a challenge to the industry. Let's go clockwise around the board. So we'll start with Alexandra. Do you want to give us some closing comments? 30 seconds is your limit.
Thank you, guys. So fully agree with you, Satyaki. We have the technology. We just have to put it in place. So the challenge is, and respond to the question really quick. Yes, what we are trying to connect is really simple, Raul. So it's really fast. So the challenge is, let's do it, and let's show the world and show the airline companies and the governments that this is possible, and then we can challenge them to amplify this. So totally agree what we are doing and fully approved. So
great, thank you, Alexandra. Satyaki, over to you.
No, I mean, I think everybody has probably covered what we were all trying to get to. I think the technology exists, as I said, as most of you agreed. I still think that in sort of, we've got to we can't get to one solution all in. I'm not sure I know what Floyd is talking about. So I'm not going to comment on that because I just don't know what it is. But I think in a market like India, at least, the fastest thing to do is to do something with that mobile phone. It seems to be the easiest way to reach people at this point. It doesn't necessarily have to be a smartphone, but it needs to be something that can get to the general population. And the interesting thing here, and the reason I sort of talked about the digital stack as far as payments were concerned in India, is that what COVID has done in a sort of an incredible way in India, in terms of equalizing certain things, is the digital payment stack, as I spoke about before. So everywhere you go, regardless of where you are in India, and India is pretty large, and parts of India are pretty remote, and it's unbelievable. But you can literally use your phone to pay for everything. So the roadside vendor, the guy who's pushing a small cart, a small tea stall, somebody selling something in some remote corner, it doesn't matter. But everybody has Google Pay. Everybody has a local app called Phone Pay. Everybody has got the UPI payment gateway stack. I don't have to carry my wallet or cash anymore. And I'm not even talking about a large city. I'm talking about the most remote parts of India, which is why the phone solution became so ubiquitous and so easy. So I mean, I'd love to see other solutions also, but to me, operating in this environment, given sort of the diversity in population, the diversity in socioeconomic milieu, the phone still seems to be an incredibly easy way of equalizing things, and I've seen it. So till I see the alternative, I still think that in this market, that's probably going to be the easiest thing to do.
Thank you, Satyaki. I understand what you're saying there. You've got your kind of, there is an ecosystem, if you like, across that particular area that is thriving and might be different to, say, what's happening in the West, but is prevalent, and that is the normal way of doing life, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I think once the payment is done, right, Raul, I mean, I think that's the interesting thing, because it's so important to get paid for everybody for whatever service or goods that they're offering. It's become just so incredibly prevalent.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Alex, I know you've got to run at 1, so a quick comment from you.
Yeah, all the technologies that we've been discussing today, either ones that exist or ones that we hope to exist in the near future, are critical, really, because we need to have travel testing that is fit for purpose, that's sustainable, that doesn't actually cause people huge amounts of pain and stress. and needs to be seen by both individual travelers and governments as a pretty cost-effective insurance policy against further transmission of this virus or potentially future pandemics, as has been touched on before. So it's our job as providers, it's our job as technology companies to make that a reality. And I think that's a challenge. We've all worked hard at that, and our challenge is pushing that over the line.
Agreed. Yeah, challenge accepted gladly. And finally, Floyd, closing comments from you, sir.
Just grab the data, match it to identity at the source whenever that test or whatever that data is that you want validated is brought together. So create that cryptographic message and put it in the ecosystem. And then for Satyaki in his environment, when that person gets their boarding pass on their phone, or whether they decide to print it, there will be a tick mark on there saying that their passport has been connected to their health certificate or to their vaccination certificate, and they're fit to fly. So accurate data, secure that data, apply rules to it so that you don't have any refusal of travel at the point of entry or point of exit. And it will help the airlines thrive and get us all traveling and keep us out of another lockdown.
Fantastic. Thank you, Floyd, for summing up so well. Thank you to all four of you gentlemen for your contributions today. It's really, really appreciated. It's good to have some vibrant conversation about this. And I think together with our progressive attitudes, we will force this industry to make the revival that is long due. So we'll call it there. We've just gone just over an hour. Thank you, everyone who's been watching, for your time as well. If you've got any other questions any of the people who are on this webinar, please do reach out. You can find us on LinkedIn or even on email or websites. Very, very accessible there. Reach out and we'll happily chat to you about any opportunities that you can see. So it just leaves me to say thank you very much. And guys, if you want to say thank you as well.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you again soon.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.